Study and learn each of these 13 graphic design tips today to never create an amateur design ever again. And that starts with learning about something called relief zones and how they affect your work. If everything's feeling a bit heavy on your design, nothing will hit properly to your audience or to the client. Sometimes a poster or editorial spread is jammed with big names, bold type, high energy, and as a consumer of this design, your brain will get tired. Enter the cognitive relief zone. This can be a low density section on your layout. Maybe it's a warm grey block. Maybe it's just a soft type and empty space. And the job here is to give the mind a space to breathe. It helps reset visual energy so the next loud moment hits a bit harder. And a pro tip here is that relief zones don't mean white space. They mean intentional calm. So you can use warm tones, soft structure, a limited contrast. It's the visual version of silence in music. Here's the messy museum exhibition poster. We have a giant title, 3 taglines, 2 images, a sponsor wall, curator names, dates, hours, map icon, QR, social headlines, 12 micro choices. That's just too much, so I'm going to cut things down to 4 decisions. What is it? The exhibition title. What to look at? 1 hero artwork. When? The dates. Everything else in a proximity group. Everything else gets grouped into a tiny footer strip. The sponsors go monotone in 1 line. And now for the 10-second test. Show your graphic design to a fresh pair of eyes and ask, what is the one idea on this design? You want something like the Bauhaus retrospective at the Design Museum, October 12th to January 5th. If they say anything broader or get stuck listing extras, we cut again. The goal is fewer decisions blocking the main gist of the design. And you need to consider the CTA, which of course on this is simply to inform people of when, where, and so on. Graphic design is a lot about rhythm, and in a big way, spatial rhythm. Let's say you've got a large image block top left of your poster with 60 pixels of a margin top and left. Now further down in the layout, you've got a quote block. Try echoing that 60 pixel margin top and left again down here. The viewer doesn't know what you did, but they feel it. This is a spatial echo. It's when you repeat spacing from one part of your layout in a totally separate area, and it creates this kind of subconscious structure, like the design is actually breathing in tempo. Now, another example would be to imagine that you're working on a record vinyl sleeve cover design. The artist's name is spaced exactly 40 pixels from the bottom on the front cover. But flipping things over to the back cover, instead of guessing your spacing for the track list, use the same 40 pixels from the top for the title, and then we can double up that 40 pixels to make 80 pixels for the song name after the title. No lines needed, no rules, just a repetition. And this is harmony through invisible rhythm. And then of course at the bottom, a logo or a motif can be 40 pixels from that bottom edge. So you're designing for a client's Instagram account. You've got, 1080 by 1350 pixels to work with, and the audience notoriously swipes quite fast on IG. That means your hierarchy needs to be vertical with quick entry points, clear rhythm, and strong anchors in the first third of the image. But on LinkedIn, the layout shifts. You'll need more breathing space and a better use of white space to hold attention in scroll stop conditions. And the first skill here is layout fluency. It is that ability to adapt a design across different platforms, different contexts, and it's quite a rare skill in designers this day and age. It's something hugely important, however. Learn what type of layout structures thrive on each platform. Stacked versus horizontal, fast versus slow pacing, compact versus expansive composition. What you're developing here is platform fluency, and in 2025, designers who can adapt layouts with platform-first logic will lead the pack. And that's because many clients, especially the higher paying ones, don't just want one great design. They want a system that works everywhere, fluently. Next, we're looking at something so cool and yet so easy to use. We're going to create one isolation von Restov aspect to our graphic design workflow. And so on this album cover, I'll make the band name the Star using exactly one isolation tactic. Option A is a unique hue, so everything else is muted, but the title is its own isolation hue. Option B, unexpected scale, so oversize the title so it bleeds to the edge. Option C, subtle motion, and so for prints that could be like a motion blur or some kind of trail. Now you can create 3 artboards or 3 canvases side by side and then lay each design out against each other. This will let you see which one works best. And doing this helps you create a clear and concise focal point, which drags a viewer right into our design. But this is only the start of the journey on a graphic design. So graphic designers who have transcended the amateur level of thinking know that every strong layout tells a 3-beat story because that's how the eye makes sense of a page. It lands, it verifies, and then hopefully it acts. So on a blood donation billboard, put the entry where left to right readers naturally start, so top left, and make it the highest value contrast and the largest type on the board. Keep it short, so ideally under 7 words, but of course it depends what you're working with from the client. And this is so the gist forms instantly at a drive-by glance on this billboard. The proof must sit immediately adjacent to that headline, so pair a bold, scannable stat like 1 donation equals up to 3 people helped. And we need this with a concrete, close-crop visual that turns abstraction into reality. And then place the action where the eye naturally travels along, so with the F or the Z pattern, and let it sit there in isolation. And so we're going to have text give to 88990 set in a solid readable typeface, protected by a white space moat and a single accent color that doesn't compete with the headline. And so now we have entry, proof, action. The result is persuasion by graphic design. Now most amateur graphic design layouts die when it comes to the typography ramp. So we need to look at 3 tiers here: primary, secondary, and tertiary. And we can add a hero level for those big attention-grabbing titles. So pick a scale, just something that has consistent steps that you can use to size your text. This makes everything look and feel related and neat. So start with the body text, and I'm going to start with 11 points. And my ratio here is going to be 1.618. And all we do is climb the ladder by multiplying. So, body text, 11. Secondary subheading text, 11 times 1.618 comes to 17.8, which we can round up to 18. And the primary, the headlines, 18 times 1.618 comes to 29.1, which we can round down to 29. And that hero headline, 29 times 1.618 comes to 46.9, rounded up to 47. So in this magazine feature spread design here, the hero headline is 47 for the maximum impact. Primary headlines 29, secondary being 18, and tertiary body text 11. This process has 3 simple steps, and the first step is to identify the emotions you want to evoke on your design. And to do this, just simply take your design brief and then gauge what emotions you want the audience to feel from the design brief. And to show you how that works, let's take this video game poster design brief as an example. A lot of designers will look at this and they're going to miss the crucial key points on this brief, the emotions. Notice in the brief it says excitement and also FOMO, or fear of missing out. These 2 golden nuggets of information are what we're looking for in this first step. Next step, write down somewhere 4 categories of color, typography, imagery, and layout. These are the main essential building blocks of your design, or any design for that matter. The third step is to write down ways you can express the emotions within those 4 categories. So for color, we might want to use reds or possibly vibrant bold colors. This is because these colors are hard-hitting and exciting, which leads back to that emotion of excitement. For typography, we might want to go with futuristic, bold sans serifs, and that's again leading back to excitement. When it comes to imagery, we could maybe include a countdown timer on the poster, and this would make the audience feel like they don't have much time left to buy the game or to wait for it to launch. Or we could even make the poster look like it's a really crowded virtual world of many different players. See, it's simply about linking emotion to your design choices. And yes, you will need to learn about the basics of things like different typefaces and how they evoke different psychological attributes. But stuff like that does come with experience. The emotion is the key factor or fabric of a design. I used to lose an entire morning finding fonts. Now I run a simple system in Fontbase. It's a fast, free font manager built for designers on Mac, Windows, even Linux. So open up Fontbase with your project in mind and make a type deck. It's just a simple collection for this job. Now drag in your short list of fonts, and if you need more options, just pull up something like Google Fonts with just one click. Now jump into the playground, paste a real headline or a paragraph, maybe even a caption, and you can nudge the tracking and the leading. You could even try the variant font sliders. And you just want it to be looking like your actual layout on the design, not just some lorem ipsum text. And so when a couple of the families feel close, you can hit pin to lock in your base choice at the very top. Then scroll the contenders beneath. It's like a quick A/B test. So check for compatibility, check the glyphs, the numerals, make sure the font holds across different weights. And if you want to speed this up even more, switch on Fontbase Awesome and use the super search. It maps families by weight, width, and contrast and actually get them up on screen. And if you're using Adobe Apps, auto activation turns on missing fonts the moment you open a file, which is really cool. And you can try all the premium features free for 3 months using my code Satori, but you can try Fontbase for free via the link down below. So, moseying over back to typography for a moment, pairing fonts incorrectly is the quickest way to look amateur as a graphic designer. And yeah, sure, font pairing is something that is learned to become like a natural instinct with time and experience, but you can also do this. On this logo design cheat sheet, which you can download for free from logodesignprocess.com, created by myself, instead of trying to pair fonts, we could just run with one variable family. So the primary, slightly wider and obviously heavier. Secondary notes, regular width, medium weight. And the tertiary being a touch more narrow with lower grade so it fits small. To achieve this, we can use clear, visible jumps between text rows when you're using a variable font. So change the weight by around 100 to 200 units. An example being the body text 400, the subheading 600, and the headline here 800. This is just a quick guide, but again, having a strict system can help speed things up and breed confidence in a designer. But when someone really moves far beyond amateur with their skill level, a lot of this simply becomes second nature and instinctive. There's a saying that I like to keep in mind: design once, test 4 times after. Too many designers only test their work at full size, but typography, layout, and balance change when scale changes. So here's the move. Pick 4 checkpoints. It could be 1920, 768, 280, and 64. Now test your design in those sizes. You might notice that at smaller scales, tight letter spacing collapses, thin fonts vanish, margin spacing feels exaggerated or cramped. And this is how you can train your eye to think dynamically. It doesn't matter if it's a poster or a magazine cover. People will see it on screenshots, thumbnails, zoomed in, printed out, you name it, it will be seen in that way. And it's your job to make it hold up in those situations. Before we move into the advanced sections or look at tips and tricks when it comes to shape psychology, we absolutely have to 100% be clear on what each shape evokes psychologically speaking. And first we have the geometric shapes. And we're going to start with circles, which are very heavily psychological in graphic design. They have no beginning or no end, they are symmetrical, smooth, and enclosed. Circles are often associated with unity, wholeness, and harmony. They feel comforting, stable, and protective because of their infinite form. Pepsi's circular logo tries to convey friendliness and community, matching its inclusive, refreshing brand identity. And car brands often use circles in the logos because of the secure and safety factor. Next, we have squares. Now, squares represent stability, reliability, and professionalism. They often convey a sense of order, structure, and trustworthiness. Microsoft's square logo shows the brand's 4 core products while reinforcing a sense of structure and consistency, and this is ideal for tech giants. Triangles are quite interesting as they can represent a few different things depending on which way they are pointing. Triangles can signify action, energy, or movement depending on their orientation. Upward triangles can suggest stability and progress, while downward triangles can imply instability or focus. The play button icon, typically a triangle pointing right, universally conveys movement and forward progression, and this enhances its function for media and entertainment purposes. Like squares, rectangles feel sturdy and dependable, but add a kind of directional elements that can lead the viewer's eye. They feel secure and organized. National Geographic's yellow rectangular border frames its content with a sense of exploration and focus, encapsulating the brand's emphasis on storytelling. Now, hexagons imply connection and efficiency, often associated with technology or collaboration due to their natural fit in patterns. The logo for Slack uses interconnected hexagons to represent the collaboration that does define the brand, and this hints at a teamwork and communication element. Ovals feel organic and feel gentle, often symbolizing motion or the flow of time, and that's with a calming and approachable kind of vibe. The Ford logo uses an oval to give a sense of stability and approachability, softening the brand's powerful automotive image. And that moves us briskly into the next category of shapes, which is the organic shapes. Organic shapes are simplified or stylized representations, often suggestive rather than literal. They typically have curves and aren't all that geometric. But what about the actual psychology of these shapes? Well, abstract shapes give a brand or a design a modern, often open-ended feeling, allowing viewers to often interpret meaning freely. Organic shapes are often linked to natural products or messages, but of course not always. One example of not always is the Nike swoosh, as that's an abstract shape that suggests speed and movement, and this enhances the brand's athletic and empowerment identity. Now, one really important part of graphic design is symbolism, and that's where symbolic shapes come into play. Symbolic shapes carry a widely recognized meaning, and are often tied to cultural or sociological associations. So things that are literal such as hearts, stars, crosses, arrows, etc. In graphic design, they bring immediate associations and clarity, like hearts for love or stars for excellence. This can be incorporated into concepts for any kind of design. For example, the heart shape in the Airbnb's logo, which symbolizes belonging and feeling at home, and this aligns with their brand mission. Also, on this design here, we can see the animated arrow carrying the typography, but the arrow literally suggests movement in the direction of the basketball player. Again, symbolic shapes are very, very literal and they evoke a message instantly. That's basically their job. Then we have lines or line-based shapes. These are typically linear shapes or boundaries without fill, and of course can range from straight to wavy lines. Lines can direct focus, suggest movement, or create rhythm, adding either calmness or energy. But in general, vertical lines are dominant and energetic, and horizontal lines are more peaceful and more stable. IBM's logo uses horizontal lines within its lettering to create a sense of stability and rhythm while suggesting modernity and connection. Now some of the juicy and usable tips that you can use on your designs when using shape psychology. We're talking about the pro tips and the hacks and so forth. And yes, we're also going to look at hard evidence on how this stuff isn't just hocus pocus voodoo BS. So the first hack or pro tip is that triangles are the ultimate tool for creating a sense of movement. You can strategically position triangles to direct the eye and add urgency. Try using upward pointing triangles to imply growth and ambition, or downward ones for grounding and stability. You can position triangles at image corners to point towards your focal points, And the triangles don't have to be totally obvious. As you can see in the black space towards the bottom of this design is a right-facing triangle. And also the triangle shape itself doesn't have to be that obvious, it could just be subtle and abstract. Considering that squares or rectangles can create order or stability, it can be a good idea to use these shapes for educational or informative designs, and here's how. Try a grid-based layout that uses squares or rectangles for image frames or text boxes. This approach not only organizes content, but it visually conveys dependability and straightforwardness. When information is laid out in this way, it achieves a more serious and a more direct manner. Also, these rigid and balanced shapes help the information to be processed easier to the viewer. And 2 points to you if you notice the triangle arrows pointing the viewer around this second design. If you want a design's message and visual language to be more approachable and more informal, rounded corners on squares and rectangles soften the design and make it feel more approachable. And this is excellent for friendly or casual branding or designs in general. You can see on these examples how more friendly and non-serious the design appears simply because of the rounded corners on the shapes. The next tip is one of my most favorites. Try to combine shapes with colors that evoke the same emotion. So if you're using organic circular shapes that are calming, use desaturated calming colors as well. It seems obvious, but many designers don't even consider or think like this. Slanted or angled shapes add a sense of movement. So for example, maybe for a sporting design, you could arrange angled shapes around the athlete or just simply to imply motion. Use triangles in the background to intensify the sense of speed and action, and slanted lines can also evoke a sense of modernity and futurism as they do suggest moving into something new. Asymmetric designs create a sense of action and movement, which can energize a layout and draw attention. A dynamic website landing page featuring an asymmetrical grid layout with images and products off-center can evoke excitement and encourage exploration, making the page feel more lively. This shape psychology refers more to the layout rather than the actual shapes themselves. Now, if you're working on a design for something like skincare products, wellness, or something along those lines, one easy way to make a home run hitting design is to use organic, free-form shapes to create a sense of comfort. This is instantly often associated with nature and human connection. As example, a wellness brand could use wavy organic shapes in their package design. This not only creates a calming visual effect, but also communicates a connection to nature and holistic health. And now, to dispel the myth that shape psychology is a bunch of hooey and doesn't have any place or relevance in reality and graphic design, because it does. Now, it's been shown in scans that the brain has dedicated areas for processing basic visual elements, including shapes. The primary visual cortex and regions of the optical and parietal lobes help us interpret shapes and assign meaning based on learned and intuitive associations. For example, fMRI scans show heightened brain activity in the amygdala, a center for emotions, and that's when viewing angular or sharp shapes. This supports the idea that these shapes evoke stronger, often more intense responses. But get this, the influence of logo shapes, including those of brands like Pepsi, has been studied to understand consumer perception. Research often cited in this field includes a 2015 study by Dr. Milika Morman and Dr. Andrew A. Mitchell, and this examined how shape affects brand perception. Their study, Shapes, Colors, and Brand Identity, exploring the role of visual properties in consumers, which was published in Journal of Marketing Research, found that circular logos tend to evoke feelings of warmth, community, and harmony, whereas angular logos were associated with durability, strength, and professionalism. But the researchers of a different study in 2013, which was published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, presented participants with images containing basic geometric shapes, such as circles, squares, and triangles, and this was in neutral colors, as example black or gray. The simplicity of the shapes helped isolate the emotional impact specifically related to the form rather than other design elements like color or texture. Participants also viewed a mix of smooth-edged and sharp-edged shapes to analyze the psychological effects of curvature versus angularity in design. The primary tool for measuring emotion was the positive and negative affect schedule, or PANAS scale. And this allowed participants to rate how each shape made them feel in terms of emotions like calmness, excitement, anxiety, or trust. This approach helped quantify emotional reactions on a standard scale, making the response comparable across participants and cultures. The results concluded that shapes do evoke specific emotion that can transcend cultural boundaries, though cultural nuances influence how strongly these emotions are felt. They suggest that designers can utilize these findings to create more targeted visuals, choosing shapes that align with the desired emotional impact of a brand or message, such as circles for inclusivity or squares for stability. So when you're next looking at a graphic design, or better yet, looking at your screen while designing your next project, really do consider how shape impacts psychology. Graphic design is visual communication, and shapes are some of the most hard-hitting tools when it comes to evoking messages, emotions, and feelings to our audiences. And they won't be able to attract those higher-paying clients. Design Ops stands for Design Operational Systems, and even solo designers need to understand how their work fits into operational systems. Let's take, for example, a logo design client. More than likely, that client will want a scalable, flexible asset that behaves consistently across different formats. So if you hand off your logo design to a client and you just send them a PNG, EPS, and AI file, then you are missing this ops layer of the profession. A smart logo delivery might look something like this: a primary mark, a secondary lockup, an icon-only version, and a grayscale version. But beyond that, explain when to use each of these. Include a usage sheet with margin rules and contrast tips. That's operational thinking. It reduces brand inconsistency, and it shows clients that your logos aren't just aesthetically pleasing, but they're built for real-world use and situations. So yeah, learn the workflow beyond the artwork, because that's where headaches are either made or prevented for your clients. In a world of shrinking screens, smaller attention spans, and tighter design briefs, your ability to compress meaning into minimal forms is critical. Strategic visual compression means communicating a whole idea or concept with just a few pixels. And this might sound impossible or near impossible or even crazy, but hear me out. It's about translating brand values, product features, or emotions into distilled, memorable visuals. And practically, start thinking in layers as a designer. So what is the core message? Can a supporting shape or color add meaning without more clutter? Can text or tone carry what visuals don't? This skill does take time to master and to cultivate, but it makes your designs more iconic, more adaptable, and more effective. And so if your designs feel overcomplicated, this might be a missing skill. It's all about saying more by doing less, really. But if you want to learn some more crucial skills as a graphic designer, just click that video on the screen. But until next time guys, design your future today. Peace.